Oops. We're going to start the Planning Committee for this afternoon. On the Planning Committee with me is Roxanne Murphy and Jean Knutson, who is excused this afternoon. Michael Lillquist will be filling in for him as our third member. We have one item this afternoon to discuss and to vote on. It is a scope of work, schedule, and public participation plan associated with the 2016 Bellingham Comprehensive Plan update. And we will receive a report and have a short discussion, and then hopefully have a motion to recommend approval. To give our report is our interim planning director, Greg Aucock, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Council. I have just a few slides this afternoon to show you. It's a summary of the information that's in your packet, and I promise there will be no reference during this presentation to floaties. Engineers. I wasn't the first. Okay, so the requirements, here we go. We have to adopt an updated plan by 2016, and the key word in that sentence is updated. What the GMA says is that we have to review our existing plan and see where it needs to be updated to respond to any changes that have occurred in the GMA since we adopted our plan in 2006. So we're not required to create a whole new plan or reinvent the wheel here. We're required to update our existing plan. The plan has to cover a 20-year planning period from 2016 to 2036. It has to include new population and employment growth forecasts. We have to update the urban growth area boundary while we're doing this work. We have to make sure the plan has the required chapters: land use, housing, transportation, parks, capital facilities, and utilities. And in our plan, we also have three what are called optional chapters: economic development, environment, and community design. In terms of environmental review for the update, Whatcom County is producing an EIS. We are involved in that process and helping to fund it. It's scheduled to be, the draft is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year. And then we'll probably need to do some additional work that's more specific to areas inside the city. Transportation modeling, or perhaps some additional environmental work to supplement the work that the county's doing. We really began in 2013 with some preliminary work. We developed this preliminary project scope. We approved an interlocal agreement with the county and the other cities in the county to hire consultants to develop population and employment growth forecasts for us and those allocations to cities. We've been working with the county on the land capacity analysis, and that's the review of our existing vacant land and how much capacity is forecasted for that land, and then we compare that with the growth forecasts and we see how things match up. We've been looking at the chapters in the 2006 plan, identifying areas where information is now outdated and needs to be updated. And we've been meeting quarterly with an elected officials group. We did that 4 times in 2013. We've met, I think, twice this year. We have another meeting upcoming in August or September. And that's a group of elected officials from all the jurisdictions. Just as a sounding board, we update them on the process. It's a chance for the different jurisdictions to talk to each other, and that'll happen throughout the process. This year, approving this scope and schedule and public participation plan, we've already approved the preliminary population and employment growth forecasts, and the county approved our recommendations. We'll complete the land capacity analysis work with the county this year. We need to then compare the land capacity with the growth forecasts and see what that means for our UGA. And if we want to suggest any changes to our urban growth area boundary, we want to decide what those might be at this point later this year. As I said, complete the environmental work with the county, begin drafting some new chapters later this year, and again, meeting with the elected officials group. 15, the environmental review gets complete. We finish drafting new chapters, and the Planning Commission begins their review probably in the second half of 15. We've sort of laid out about a 6-month process for the Commission to complete their review and forward their recommendations on to Council. And that will give you about 6 months or so in 16 to complete the Council's review and adoption by July 1 deadline. So that's what the schedule looks like in broad terms. In terms of the staff recommendation that you see in this scope, again, the overriding theme here is we're not reinventing the wheel. We have a pretty good plan. It's served us fairly well. We've been implementing it for 7 or 8 years now. We think a lot of it is still very relevant, and we should include that in our update. And so we're not planning to reinvent the wheel here. We're planning on updating, we're planning on improving, we're planning on prioritizing, we're planning on taking out stuff that doesn't need to be in there anymore, deleting outdated information, looking at all the goals and policies. Are they still relevant? Are they providing true guidance for staff, for the Planning Commission and Council? It's sort of like looking at the things in your garage or in your closet. If you haven't used them in the last 10 years, you probably don't need them, and we have a lot of stuff in our plan that we haven't used. But there are things in there that have provided true policy guidance for staff and for the Planning Commission and for Council. We want to focus on those things. We want to spend a fair amount of time reviewing alternatives for accommodating the approved population and employment growth forecasts. So doing that work rather than creating a whole new plan with whole new goals and policies and so forth. We have a big challenge in front of us in terms of accommodating those growth numbers, and that's where we need to spend, we believe, a fair amount of time. We think we should use, and we hope you agree, the recent economic development chapter that was adopted last year as a model. It's 15 pages long. It has 5 goals and a few policies that go with each goal. I don't know that we need 150 land use policies. We probably can, focus on the ones that are really important, that provide true guidance, as I said. And that's what we did with the economic development chapter. And continue to focus on implementation. That's what we've been doing for since 2006. We've been implementing the plan. And we want to keep some of our staff working on those implementation activities. And so focusing on updating rather than redoing allows us to do that. It allows us to use less staff on the update and keep people working on implementing the plan that we already have. I asked staff for a list of things that we've done since 2006 to implement our comp plan, and I got back 5 pages of stuff. And I can share that with you at some point. It's truly amazing when you look at the list of the things that we've done since 2006 to implement the plan that we have. We want to continue that work. In terms of the public participation plan, we want to consistently provide updated information to the public. We can do that through our website, through our Facebook page, through using mailing lists, keeping people updated on what's going on, when meetings are being held, how they can participate. That's how we would seek early and continuous public involvement. We want to offer as many opportunities for feedback as we can to staff, Planning Commission, and Council. A survey perhaps, focus groups perhaps, web page, Facebook page, flyers. And we also want to use the established advisory groups, the Planning Commission, the Transportation Commission, MNAC, the Parks Advisory Board, the Historic Preservation Commission. There are a bunch of established groups that provide advice to you and the Planning Commission, and we want to use them as well. And we've also tried to build into the schedule adequate time for both the Commission and the Council to do a good job in the review process and allow enough time for public hearings and work sessions so that you and the Commission feel comfortable in the work that you're doing and you feel good about it when you get to the end product. So with that, I will entertain any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Greg. Turn it over to the committee. Roxanne?
So Council received some community feedback, and I understand where it was coming from. The public outreach plan includes a list of organizations, And it's kind of sad to me that, for example, community members are at the bottom of the list. So maybe the person didn't get to that section, but they felt like these stakeholders were going to be the only people we were going to reach out to, and that's simply not the case. So would it be possible for us to add the community member section up higher to make sure that citizens know that they're going to be in the heart of this just as much as the other stakeholders are?
Yeah, it's page 375, and these are a list of the stakeholder groups. And anytime you do a list, you take the risk of leaving somebody out or not having the right order, even though it says right at the top that it's not an exclusive list. Yeah, we could definitely move up the community members to the top of the list. That would be no problem.
Thank you.
Michael?
I have a similar suggestion. It's kind of, ironic. This is a public participation document, but the word public isn't used as much. I would actually suggest in the goals where the bullet points say stakeholders, that you just every time replace the word stakeholder with public and stakeholders, public and stakeholders. Just use the word public. Make sure that that is really upfront in the goals. I think it serves the same purpose, which is to highlight that this is a public participation plan and the public is, broadly speaking, is the target, as well as the enumerated bodies. So
We can do that.
I would offer that change in addition or instead to address the same concern.
We can do that.
Okay, Michael?
And a second issue on the stakeholders, I think maybe we could add a government-to-government stakeholder, the Lummi Nation in particular, on our waterfront as well as our northwest quarter. I know that the Lummi and City of Bellingham have kind of overlapping concerns. I assume we're going to be notifying them and they know, but in the plan it seems to me we should add that as a government-to-government stakeholder.
Okay.
And then my 2 cents into that list as well is that, to me, I think that Sustainable Connections, I don't look at it as much of an environmental group as a, as a business and development type organization. I'm wondering if that could be switched over to there. And in the environment section, it seems like the organization Resources has been doing some work associated with both environmental issues and a little bit in land use planning as well, to include that organization.
Yes, we can do that.
And is there, we have in there employees, this is a small point, but we have employees in there, but we don't have employers outside of the trade groups that employers are maybe part of, but that doesn't necessarily mean some of the small businesses either. I know that this is not an all-inclusive list, but I think that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Okay, Michael?
One more question. You have on pages 371, 372, estimated portions of employees, half of an FTE, 1.5 FTEs, 0.2 of an FTE. In general, can you give me a general, how does that workload compare to previous times when we were doing a more thorough update, or did we not track staff workload so accurately back in 2006-07?
I can give you a general sense. This is probably a third of the staff that we had associated with the 2006 plan.
And I'm thinking that, for example, the bike and ped master plans, as well as the recent PRO, the Parks Plan, and the Economic Development chapter, that, I don't know, what, a third of the plan is already kind of finished or so fresh it won't need much work? Is that about right? A third of it is so new it doesn't even need to be updated.
Right. The Economic Development chapter is, right, doesn't need to be updated probably. The Environment chapter, I think, does need a little bit of an update. And the other ones are all older than that.
Well, I guess a follow-up to that, you were explaining the fact that new chapters would need to be written. What are the chapters when you're providing your PowerPoint?
Yeah. There are some issues that we do need to address, and not all of those chapters probably need to be rewritten. Go back to that. Not all of these chapters probably need to be rewritten, but they all need to be scrubbed. And so taking out outdated, we don't want to readopt outdated information, for example, and we don't want to continue to have goals and policies that aren't providing any guidance. So there will need to be a fair amount of work in all of the chapters. Obviously, the land use chapter is the one that's going to take the most work, because that's where we reconcile growth projections versus capacity, and the policy basis for how we're going to accommodate growth is established.
That and some work in the transportation element as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Roxanne? Okay.
Well, I just have a statement to make it really clear to all of our citizens that, let's say you're not a member of these stakeholders that are on the list in this plan, there's going to be so much opportunity built into this plan for everyone. That includes an open house. You can follow us through our social media. There's going to be a public hearing. And so there's going to be so much opportunity, and we really hope to get as much feedback as we can regarding the plan.
Mayor?
Well, and I just wanted to assure the committee that as when we did this same thing to all the natural resource statutes or to any other kind of scrubbing that we did at the state level, there were the things that were just putting things in the right place and eliminating duplications and identifying gap stuff, but any policy changes, obviously, you'll see all of it, but the policy changes or any recommended policy changes would always come to the council. So we won't be changing anything without you, if it's a policy issue, without you approving it.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions I had, as far as we have a lot of conflicting policy goals and statements. Where we want to go and do A, but we also want to do B, and we don't, and it's sort of like a pick and choose type of thing. How are we going to, reconcile that? Are you just going to identify those and then bring them to the Planning Commission and to us to figure out what would be the best pathway?
Yes,
just a
we'll
list of them?
identify those for you, and we'll seek your guidance in how to resolve them. And we may not be able to resolve all of them, but yeah, that's part of the process.
And it did work at the state level with all the natural resources rules, obviously more than is what is in our comprehensive plan. So it was identifying the conflicts, the overlaps, the gaps. I think one of the things that Greg mentioned, which is very important, is to look at all the various zoning we have in every corner of the world and make sure that we have our goals in mind when we talk about what our zoning is and what our development regulations are, requirements. So, but all of that will come to you. It's not anything that the staff or myself is going to do in isolation.
Okay, great. Other questions? Okay, I had one last one. When was the last GMCC meeting?
It was in May, I believe.
I don't think
May of this year?
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, you were not there.
What's that?
You were not there.
I wasn't there. I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Because I never saw a notice about that.
Okay. We'll make sure you're on. The next one is actually going to be here in town, so we need to have
Okay,
a nice
what was
representation.
the topic in May?
It was just an update. It was just an update and reporting back on the population growth forecast that had been adopted by the county. So it was an update of what's been going on in the last 3 months.
Wow. Okay, that's too bad. That somehow looks like our names got dropped off the list for some reason. Have there been other meetings this year then? Because the last one I remember was the one that we had that ended up cementing our interlocal agreement with the county.
I think there have been 2 this year. I'll have to check. I think there was one early in the year and then in May, as I said. I think they're quarterly. and the
Well,
next
that's
one
what
is.
yeah, but I haven't been able to go to one because I didn't think that they were having them. I thought what was happening was that the staff was just in a
You were
work
at the
mode.
last one that I was at. I think you've only missed one, so,
Okay.
yeah.
But we'll make sure that the schedule is out there, because I wasn't at, I think you and I were both missing from the one that we both missed. So if there are materials or something, Greg, from that meeting, could you share them so we
Sure.
have that?
Yes. Okay.
And let us know as soon as possible when the May meeting is, or not the May meeting, we've
The
already missed
August
That's the
that.
next meeting.
The next one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Thanks, Clayton.
I move to approve the proposed scope, schedule, and public participation plan for the 2016 Comprehensive Plan Update Project.
All right. We have a motion on the floor. Michael, do you want to speak to it?
Does that include the little suggestions that were offered by the council?
I believe it does, doesn't it? Yes, it does.
Is that your understanding?
To include the community, the council feedback to the
Thank you.
plan.
Okay.
Can I ask one question about that?
Yes.
When it says environmental, do we want to put community organizations rather than,
That's a fair
because then
suggestion.
we wouldn't have to move Sustainable Connections out of someplace and put someplace in. So I think there are some consistent community organizations that regularly, work with the city or give input to the city. So maybe we could make that change too, Greg, instead of changing that, just change the title of environment to community organizations.
I'm sorry, I thought we were moving Sustainable Connections up to the business section. and
Well,
add-
I think there might be some, I think I would feel more comfortable if they were under community organizations. I think
Well-
they have a dual purpose. I mean, people
That's
can,
what I'm looking at. I mean, people look at that organization and think that they really are trying to, they're trying to go and promote business and economic development in the community. Other people look at their sustainable cred and think that they're an environmental organization.
well, that's why if we put community organization, it wouldn't matter. Those are just the organizations that we've actually listed, which is dangerous because there are probably other organizations we should list. But I would feel that then we don't have to spend a whole lot of time
Yeah,
wordsmithing what you are.
that's fine with the committee? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That would be part of our recommendation then.
So I need to be clear on the direction then. So we're eliminating the titles of the groups and just putting community organizations, is that?
Just on the environmental one, because we don't necessarily have every issue of organization that's in the community listed. So if we put community organizations, there's a catch-all that we could use to list or add to or whatever we want to do. So that's just that one change,
Got
Greg,
it.
so not all the rest of them.
Got it.
Yeah, it would be community organization. There'd be 4 entries under it. It would be Sustainable Connections, FutureWise, Conservation Northwest, and Resources.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. We'll bring that forward to the council this evening, and I think that's the end of our work for today. And
Chair?
yes, Mayor.
I was out of the room when you were introducing Greg, but since this is his first public performance, I think he did a great job of presenting the information to you. We're looking forward to having him as our interim planning director, and I'm quite happy that he said he would be willing to do this on a little bit short notice. So thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Thanks.
It's not his first performance. He's
No,
performed a lot of
but
times.
you get a new job title. You have
Yes,
to.
and we introduced him as our interim
I
planning
know.
director.
I heard you do that because I was just rushing to my chair. So.
Thanks, Greg. Okay,